This is an installation video on FlexiShield Cosmetic PPF, and the focus is on advanced techniques, specifically on back bumper, mirror, front fender, and front door. And we'll begin with the front door. Always a good idea to take the door handle off, then in the prep phase, put masking tape on the outside edges. This will allow the material to be easily picked back up so it can be tucked behind these edges. Always wipe the main surface down with a low-tack solution. Always be sure to wipe top and bottom and avoid putting it on the edges and in the recessed areas. Once the entire surface has been wiped down and dry, now it's time to set up a hinge. You can use magnets or in this case masking tape. Release the liner, trim the backing paper in a half moon shape, then tuck the backing paper behind the film. Once this is set, carefully pick the material up towards the top, and now it's time to set a permanent hinge. So the trick is to make sure the material is nice and even from one side to the other. Apply an application glove and now lock it to the window molding. This is the starting point. Now pick the film up off the surface and squeegee with overlapping squeegee strokes. The angle of the squeegee should be 45 degrees. Often the film can bunch up around the door handle cup, so add heat to soften it. Release the liner, but still keep it on, then squeegee it evenly on the underside to make sure the material is nice and uniform. Once it's past the door handle cup, then the film can be continued towards the bottom in firm overlapping squeegee strokes, which is easy and straightforward because the panel is vertical. For the side, you can see the benefit of the masking tape now, where it comes off the edge and the material can be tucked around the outside edge. It's always a good idea to wrap the film around these edges for good quality and long-term hold. If it's the front door, always try to do the break between the front fender and front door first, so now it allows the installer to open the door and finish the back side. It's very important to warm the film and form it around nice and even, with the focus on forming the corners and body lines first. Take the film roughly 1/4 of an inch or ½ inch around the edge or to a set body line. Click the blade so it's extra sharp and trim lightly on the surface. Only cut on the surface if you're a trained professional with years of experience. Once the film has been cut away, always go over the edge with heat to ensure a tight seal and a good long-term hold. And here's a shot of the final result again, and note that with vertical sections like this, one installer can do it by themselves. Now we move on to tips and tricks for wrapping a front fender, and it's highly recommended to use 2 installers because there's more compound curves and recessed areas. The prep, just like any other section when using FlexiShield Cosmetic PPF, is to apply the slip solution by wiping it on, then adding masking tape on the outside, then degreasing the outside edges with isopropyl alcohol. Always want to make sure degrease a ½ inch in from the outside edge and do a 360. And if there are recessed areas, always be sure to degrease these as well. A final tip is to use knifeless tape on tight gaps as opposed to using a knife. This is due to the thickness of the film, and it's hard to get the film deep enough, but by using knifeless tape, it's safe. Trim any excess film away from the panel with the liner on to save it for, let's say, mirrors. Release the liner and then stretch it along the 50-50 point or the body line. Lock it into place, then pick up the film and feed it into the upper recessed area. This avoids tension on the film, and if you notice, the slip solution allows the film to easily slide on the surface. This is extremely important for avoiding adhesive lines here. So once the material is fed towards the top, now feed it to the outside edge, and it can be simply picked back up, relax towards the front, and the air egress feature allows the air to be pressed out without bubbles. For areas that have a bit more curve, add heat. One installer holds it off the surface, the other warms it, and then it's gently stretched onto the main surface area. It's squeegeed into place, and while the lower section is done, the top section is heated and sealed to the very edge. Always use heat on the edges to relax. For the bottom section again, heat is added to the film and is gently brought to the surface. Try to avoid stretching while the heat is being added. And now for this section here, the film is fed to the outside edge, picked back up, heat is added to soften it, so now the wrinkles disappear, which means the film can be trimmed away. In this case, release the knifeless tape, remove the excess film, then tuck the film into the gap. By wrapping in this way, there's no need to remove the bumper, which is a huge time saver, and quality is ensured as well as speed. And here's a shot of the final result of the front fender using these great tips and tricks. We now move on to wrapping a mirror. Mirrors are always tricky, but as you'll see with these great tips and tricks, it can be very easy, straightforward, and even fast. If the mirror is shaped like this, with a severe drop-off from the front to the back, it's always a good idea to wrap it in 2 pieces. Because it's a direct cut on the body, add knifeless tape from top to bottom, just along the break from the back to the front, and a piece is now added to the back side. Place it at the bottom to anchor it so it holds the mirror, then add heat to gently stretch it to the knifeless tape. So by pulling just to the knifeless tape, the piece isn't stretched too much, just enough to create glass. Once glass or no wrinkles is made, then it can be squeegeed onto the surface. Once on, the knifeless tape can be released. Always remove the excess film low and flat away, and release the entire green filament for good long-term hold. Now it's time to apply the main piece, and it's best to use a Wrap UZ from Yellow Tools. Take a piece of the FlexiShield Cosmetic PPF, adhere it to the Wrap UZ. Once it's set, heat the film so it's nice, warm, and pliable. Then place it in position, hook the front corner, and pull it towards the back. It's that easy. Hold the film in position for a few seconds to let the adhesive activate. Then once set, release the excess film on the Wrap UZ. And because the film is stretched, now add heat. This causes the film to shrink slightly back to the edge, which helps ensure long-term hold and makes the install much easier. Now release the knifeless tape, create a nice overlap on the back side, then trim off the excess film on the bottom side by using a sharp blade at a 90-degree angle. Work in a nice steady movement, always cutting towards yourself, never away. Once the bottom section is done, trim the top. Once the top is trimmed, it's always a very good idea, once the excess film has been removed, to go over all the edges with heat just to make sure they're down. But as you can see by applying a piece at the back, the main piece with the Wrap UZ, the mirror can be wrapped in seconds for a perfect paint light finish. And here's a shot of the final result. No wrinkles, bottle capping, and it's going to have that great look for the long term. And the final challenging area you're going to get good tips and tricks on how to wrap with FlexiShield Cosmetic PPF is this back bumper. It's always best to use 3 installers here and an IR heater or 2 heat guns. 2 installers hold the film off the surface while 1 installer heats the film. By heating the film, it shrinks slightly into the bumper, and the installer holding the film on the section that's being heated should pull slightly but not too hard. Pulling slightly though is good in the sense that it creates energy in the film, which will then allow it to be wrapped deeper onto the section once it's on the main area. So you can see by having an IR heater, it relaxes the film in a big wide section and makes the install smoother. It's always best, if possible, to have 3 installers as it helps make the install quicker and go smoother. So you can see heat is added. The installer in the middle pulls vertical while the installer on the outside pulls horizontal. This creates a nice dynamic on the film, which allows this film, even though it's 8 mil thick, to relax even on a giant compound curve. Note that the installers aren't pulling too hard, just hard enough to create glass. Notice at the very edge they pick the film up, spread it to the corner, and hook it. And because the film was lightly stretched on the upper area, now on the bottom section, when heat is added, it literally shrinks to the bottom area. You can see this because there's no sharp wrinkles on this bottom area. This ensures long-term hold. On this upper area, a heat gun is used because it's focused, and as the film is warmed, it's now formed into the deepest part of the recessed area. This avoids adhesive lines. Now, the film is formed into the middle recessed area with an application glove and the air released on the upper section. Now it's time to form the film into the license plate area. The excess film at the bottom has been trimmed away to make the panel more easy to manage. Heat is added to the film to warm it slightly, and by using application gloves, it can be fed into this deep area. It's all about having good teamwork and understanding the properties of the film. As mentioned earlier, this film is 8 mil thick, yet with the right techniques, you can't actually take the film very far without overstretching it. And you can see at the bottom section now, heat is added and simply relaxes to the main surface area. For the upper portion here, heat is added again. The film relaxed, picked high off the surface, is given what's called the shimmy by shaking it, which evens the tension out, then is formed into that deepest part. It's not bridged and jammed in, but fed in. This will help ensure that good long-term hold. Now the excess film can be trimmed away. In this case, right along the upper edge. Always use a sharp knife and come back in and seal it. And of course the final step is to go over the entire area with a heat gun to make sure the adhesive is activated and there's no bubbles. And as you can see, with 3 installers using the right technique, you can achieve a great paint-like finish and one-piece bumper with FlexiShield Cosmetic PPF. And as you can see, by applying a wide variety of advanced tips and tricks, you can comfortably wrap any section on the car with Cosmetic PPF from FlexiShield with beautiful results, no adhesive line, and a strong corner game. And for more information on FlexiShield Cosmetic PPF, you can go to this URL where you can also find distributors and watch more how-to videos. This has been an installation tip and trick video proudly produced by the Wrap Institute.